The lady who trained me to become a volunteer with the Salvation Army at Ground Zero reminded me of a school marm in a children's storybook. She was orderly. She was kind, but she was no nonsense. And she was low-key until she started talking to us about the firefighters who would be coming to visit our tent at Ground Zero. "Don't fall in love with them," she commanded us. "These are all married men. Most of them have kids. Don't date them, don't flirt with them, don't trifle with them. They're traumatized men. Don't fall in love with them." So needless to say, that was pretty much the last thing I expected to learn when I was training for Ground Zero. And I didn't know how to respond to it. It was a little bit insulting to me that she would think that this was even a possibility. It was a little flattering to me that she even thought this was a possibility. But it was also altogether unnecessary. I too was happily married, and I had no intentions of falling in love with anybody at Ground Zero. That was not why I was going down there. But why was I going down there? Why had I volunteered to take the earliest train from Central Jersey into Manhattan and make my way all the way downtown at a time when it wasn't easy to do so? I had no experience in this before. I had no training, no skills, no physical strength of any kind. What gave me the arrogance to think that I could help in some way? And what made me so presumptuous as to think that I deserved to be there? I know that this confused some of my friends too, because they would ask me about it, especially after I started going and kept going back. "What are you doing there?" they would ask me. And I would tell them that I serve food, and I clean up food, and I greet people at the door, and I show them where the showers are and where the cots are, and I distribute gloves and hand warmers and eye drops and newspapers, and I go through big garbage bags of children's drawings, and I hang them on the wall. But I know that didn't fully answer their question. And I think I went down there because I felt small. I went down to Ground Zero in defiance of my own smallness, my essential human insignificance in the face of something that was so big. I was by no means alone in this. As Judith told you, there were thousands of people who did the same thing with the Salvation Army, with the Red Cross, and with other organizations. They came down for a day, they came down for a weekend, maybe weeks on end. But I think we all had the same motive, and that was we just wanted to help. We just wanted things to run a little bit more smoothly and do something in a tangible way to make that happen. It was kind of the least we could do. So picture me there, possibly on my very first day, in my oversized Salvation Army t-shirt that I should have worn, it would have been a good prop, and my Yankees cap, and a hairnet because I've been assigned to the food line. I'm standing there at the ready, spatula in hand, and in walk the firefighters, hungry for breakfast. I'm ready to help them, and I'm determined not to fall in love. And at first it's really easy. "What can I get you, sir?" "Eggs and pancakes, fruit salad." "Good morning, ma'am, how can I help you?" Fruit salad, pancakes, French toast, coffee's over there. I think to myself, this is not so bad. I can pretend I'm someplace else, and I can just get this job done. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Until one firefighter came over and decided to kick it up a notch. "What can I get you, sir?" He doesn't look at the food. He looks right at me, and he leans over, and he says, "What did the mayo say to the refrigerator?" And I say something like, "Shut the door." He says, "That's right, shut the door, I'm dressing." And he laughs. And so do I. And I think to myself, what kind of backbone do you need to come in from the pit at Ground Zero and come inside and crack a silly joke with a friendly stranger? Well, my friends, that did it. I fell in love. And what's more, I fell in love with all of them because it was very easy to do. Male or female, young or old, it didn't matter. I was loving them. The firefighters were like a bunch of big brothers to us. The NYPD, so upright and courtly. Everybody who came into that tent was relieved to see us. And that felt good, because that meant I really was helping, I really was doing something, and that I deserved to be there helping the city that I so adored. My fellow volunteers were very lovable too. They were also tearful and energetic, and people came from all over. There were counselors on hand too, and they were coming in to assess the volunteers as well as the first responders. So when my time came, a lady came up to me and she looked at me and she said, "So you're a Mets fan?" And I almost backed up and I said, "Yankees, actually." And she was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Of course, of course. And how are you doing? How are you handling things here? Is everything going smoothly?" I said, I'm fine, thank you." And I reassured her. But as I turned away, I felt my eyes kind of tingle a little bit in sympathy with her. because I don't know where she was from, but it had to be someplace so far away, so remote, that she could not tell the difference between the Yankees and the Mets. But here she was helping, and I really loved her for that. I had told her that it was okay, but I don't mean to make light of it, because not every day was okay, and there were a lot of hard things, and there were a lot of emotional things that we went through, of course. There was one day in the early spring when all of us volunteers were invited to what was being billed as a mass of gratitude at the Ground Zero cross. There was a driving rain that day, but I really wanted to go. And when I went, I got there, and every time I bowed my head, rain just poured off my hard hat. When it came time for the sermon, the priest stepped aside, and I realized at that point that the whole point of this was to give the first responders a chance to show gratitude to us. And so they did. They stepped forward one by one, and they spoke to us. And they said incredible things, and most of which kind of boiled down to your family. And they stood there crying in the rain at us. So it appears that my love did not go unrequited, and that they loved us too. And that was really nice to know, especially as the recovery efforts started winding down. We knew that it would wind down, we knew that it would end. I knew this specifically because in training, another Salvation Army person had said, this will end. But I didn't pay attention to that warning either, because my time at Ground Zero had become so important to me and so routine. I really loved it there, and I was very proud of what we were doing and proud of the place itself. It was this enormous tent over by where the North Tower was. And the first responders used to call it the Taj, like Taj Mahal. But I always liked to think of it as the bubble, because it was big and round, and I liked seeing its rounded, welcoming presence at the edge of Ground Zero, where everything else was so harsh and angular. But it did end, and my last shift came shortly before the final end. I worked weekends, so I didn't get to see the last beam carried out. I didn't get to partake in any closing ceremonies. When my time was done, it was done. I had to sign up, and I had to leave. So that's pretty much what I did. And I left the bubble, and I started walking, and as I always did, I waved goodbye to the police officers who stood guard at the fenced perimeter of Ground Zero, and I just kept going. But my chest felt really tight, and my heart felt like it needed to escape my body. So when I got about a block away, I let it escape. And then I turned around and I followed my heart all the way back to the tent. And I didn't go inside, but I reached up and I cupped my hand against it and touched it the way that you would touch a pregnant woman's belly. And I could feel all the activity that was going on inside. And when I let go, I sat down on the curb and I cried. And in all my time down there, that was the first time that I actually cried. So they were right to warn us about this will end, because it really did hurt. It was way harder to leave this place than it ever was to come here in the first place. But they need not have warned me against falling in love, because that was an inevitable part of the recovery process. Any playwright, any poet, any teenager is going to tell you that you can't prevent love, nor should you try, because love is what makes us grow, and love keeps us from being small.